All right, everybody, thank you for jumping on with us for our Your Story podcast. I got my girl Christine L with me, who's going to share with us and walk us down a journey of what made her who she is today. I love Christine. She's an unbelievable communicator. I mean, if you ever talk to her, just the thoroughness in which she communicates to points and bullets is like someone I've not met before. And you will not be confused when she closes out a sentence. And so it's just it's a unique communication style that I enjoy quite a bit. And so I'm happy to have you on here, Christine. Thank you for jumping on with us. How you doing today?
I am amazing. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm laughing because in front of me, talking about my story, I have bullet points. So that's funny.
Dude, I mean, I've never heard anyone communicate the way you communicate with the passion and
Yeah.
the thoroughness. It's just it's impressive and it's refreshing to listen to be honest.
Thank
When
you.
I was
Thank
hearing
you. I
you on
appreciate that.
the Millionaire Maker show, every time the camera cut to you in a private segment, I'm like, this girl's a beast. Like I'm just like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm happy to have
Thank
you on
you.
here, and I'm looking forward for the audience to get to know who you are. So
Yeah.
without further ado, if you could kind of walk us down the path, what are some of the things that made you the woman you are today, taking us back as far as you can go? That'd be amazing. We appreciate you.
Yeah. So, of course, I appreciate you reaching out to me and allowing me this opportunity to even talk about my story. Um, it's pretty interesting. A lot of people don't really know the deep, dark parts of, the beginnings because we don't really take that time to talk about it, right? And I just laughed like as I was going back. I'm like, this is my life. It's my story. Why am I literally going back and bullet pointing? But it matters. You know what I mean? It matters because as we get to certain levels in life, I think sometimes well, I'm not ever going to forget where I came from, but we kind of forget a little bit of where we came from. And it's important for us to remember so that we can stay humble, we can stay hungry, and we continue to be able to help other people that we encounter along the way, right? So I was born in 1973. We're gonna go all the way back. No, but I was born in 1973, and my mother and father were together for quite some time. I am a product of a divorced family. I have two sisters. One was a blood sister who passed away in 2015, and the other one is my adopted sister. And she kind of came in the picture because my mother couldn't have kids for years, and she thought she wasn't able to, so they went to adopt. And then when she finally completed all the paperwork with my sister Tanya, she found out she was pregnant.
Wow.
Right. So they were 11 months apart, Melinda and Tanya. So growing up was pretty interesting. And I say interesting because I remember, a lot of good times. I don't remember my parents ever arguing at all. I don't, I don't, I don't have a memory of the drama or trauma within their relationship. Obviously, there was a lot of it because they ended up in divorce. And I just remembered, I was young, I was like 10 or 11. And I remember sitting in the bathroom and I was thinking, well, who's going to pay these bills? Like, seriously, because my father always went to work and brought home the check, the military check, as well as he worked at Duquesne Light. He brought both checks home. And then when he played with his motorcycle group and everything else, my mother, I remember her saying, you want to go out there and play in the streets, you need to get a hobby and make other money because this money stays in the house. I remember those type of conversations. So my dad was an artist, a painter, carpenter. He did all kinds of things. He's very, very talented. And so I remember him making different things and making money, and then he'd be on trips or whatever, but never heard the arguments and things. So when we found out that they were going to get divorced, the question I asked was like, well, why? And my mother said, well, she didn't know that he was abusing us. So we used to get beat. Um, and the neighbor was kind of like letting her know different things because we figured she already knew. Now, the adopted sister never got beat, but me and my sister, the blood siblings, we would get beat for no reason. And so, some people don't realize that I actually wet the bed for a very long time. And the reason is because my dad had that PTSD. And if you woke up in the middle of the night and you went to the bathroom and you flushed the toilet and it woke him up, you got beat. And so in the mornings, we would try to hold it until he would get up, go to the bathroom, and then we'd hurry up and run in and go to the bathroom because now we knew he was awake. Sometimes we it didn't work out. So you'd get beat for going to the bathroom or yourself, things like that. But he was just traumatized. He was in two wars. And of course we didn't understand any of the things that he was going through. We just understood that we were literally on eggshells all the time when it came to, that part of him. And my mother didn't know. So the one day my mother had to I couldn't reach it. He's military. So everything, the way that you clean, the way that you make your bed, I mean, everything was like militant. And he wanted boys. So he kind of raised us like boys. All right. I tell people, I said I could hawk all the way across the hall, like probably further than most guys, because he was teaching us how to do stuff like that. Also things to help, in the event that we were in trouble to protect ourselves. So he was very intentional in raising us girls to be kind of like boys, if you will. Um, so that was like the beginning parts. And I remember like in school, after he had left, and then the guys would start trying to bully us. And I mean, they didn't try, they were bullying us girls. And they're like, you don't have a father in the house. Right. So we had to deal with a lot of that stuff until my mother finally was like, you know what, enough is enough. So my mother was like 5'4". She's super little, and she's a powerhouse. And I'll never forget the day that this guy, he like came by and just like slapped me on the basketball court for no reason at all, other than I was just there. And I went home and I was like, I'm gonna hurt this dude. And my mother was like, no, you're not. I got it. And so she did. She went down with her pistol and she threatened every boy on that court and let them know we didn't need to have a man in this house. If in fact you touch my girls one more time, I have no problem going to jail. Swear to God. She's like, I have no problem going to jail about my girls. Don't
Hmm.
you ever think that this is an opportunity. And nobody messed with us after that. And I
Wow.
was like, yo, my mom is like a beast. I didn't even know she had a gun. And she was like, yeah, I got this. You know what I mean? Like we're not playing these games because we lived right at the park. So like our house was perfect for growing up. Right across the street was the park, basketball, had a shelter, we played pool, all the things. But it also was all the things where a lot of the kids were. So growing up was it was rough. It definitely was rough emotionally, not understanding why, he would beat us. I mean, he would be in rages. I was hung out of a window and beat. And the next day it was like, you're on punishment. I'm like, why am I on punishment when I already got like tore up? Like, I don't understand that concept. My neighbors, they either get beat or they go on punishment. We got beat and punishment, right? It's like, how does that work? It
How
doesn't make
does
any
that
sense, but you don't
work?
ask any questions. You don't ask any questions. So, so that was the beginning stages. So then once he was gone, it kind of gave us a little more of freedom, if you will. And then I started getting into track and playing basketball, a lot of different activities to keep us busy. And so that helped with structure, right? I already had the structure in the house, but once that was removed, it was like I still was yearning structure, direction, instruction, if you will. So that's why I got into sports. Moving into high school, I remember the teachers asking, like, "Oh, what do you want to do when you grow up?" I'm like, I could do anything. And I remember telling them I could do anything. I'm like, you tell me how to do something, I can copy it and I can do it and I can perfect it. And so that was one of my gifts that I always had, not realizing I had so many, but that was definitely a gift that I knew that if you showed me how to do something, I could do it. Whether it was, I made bicycles out of copper, I made jewelry, artwork, we did screen art with like shirts. I mean, we did everything in school, which was nice. I don't think they do half of the stuff we used to do back when I was in school anymore. But I was able to do all of the things. And they're like, okay, well, we need to figure out, what it is that you want to do because, in school, they teach you to get a job. And I'm over here like, well, I mean, I can do everything. So I don't really know. They're like, well, you going to go to college? I was like, well, no, because you want me to pick a major and I can do everything. I did end up going to school though. I went for business and I went for dance. Um, and through that business course, I was through a company called Three Rivers Professional Development Program. And it was an after school program for, inner city kids, if you will. And they were there to help us kind of identify who we are, like what are our gifts, what are our passions, like what we can do. And so it was a full summer program, if memory serves me right. We had to get there at 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 every day. We had lunch. They actually recorded us as they were training us how to do interviews. They recorded us so that we could then look at ourselves on the big screen in front of the other 20 kids, young adults, and we could see our nervous habits. And so some people were with the clicking of the pen, and some people would chew their gum. And I'm like, oh my God, that looks horrible. So don't get on camera with your gum. So it really taught me a lot of those different things to pay attention to when you're nervous so that you don't do it, and how to basically, pass an interview to be able to get the job that you want, what words to use, how to speak in front of those individuals, be aware and understand that everybody's watching you at all times, right? You never know who the boss is, so always be on guard and always be ready. So that was really good, and they placed me with Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. And it was nice because I had a friend that already worked there. So I was able to use them as a reference. And the company was like, she like aced the program, did everything I needed to do. And so yeah, so that program was a pivotal moment as far as helping me in the workspace and being able to understand, like, you go to work, you're there 15 minutes early. You don't go at 9 o'clock if it's 9 o'clock, right? um, you listen, follow the rules, always excel. That way, you're going to get promoted, even if you don't have the skill set. If you are doing what you're supposed to do, people are going to recognize you and they're going to elevate you because they know they can trust you and they can rely on you. So I learned a lot of that through that program. I'm like, why did I even go to school for elementary and middle school? Because that program like really summed everything up as to life skills for a job. So I got to Highmark, started in the mailroom, and I was there for 14 years. Every year I was moved up to different departments, just as they said I would, because I was always on time. I did overtime. I was the one like, hey, I'll be there, even though I had two jobs. I still worked McDonald's, and then I was also at Highmark.
How old are you at this
Um,
point?
I was 19.
Got it.
I started there at 19,
Okay.
right? And even like going back in school, I couldn't get the high school ring or the college ring. That's why I love the rings, right?
Wow.
Somebody said they had a 6-figure ring, I'm going for it.
Right.
They had a 5-year ring, I went for it. Like
Wow.
that's my thing with the rings. And so yeah, yeah, I was 19 when I started at Highmark, and I worked up to management within that 14-year time frame. Um, but through that time period, my sister ended up having a major stroke in her 30s, which I was 3 years under her. So I was 27. She was 30. I was 28. She was 31. And they had to remove 1/3 of her left cerebellum, so part of her brain. And at that point, the doctors were like, she's not going to make it. She's going to be a vegetable. You guys need to pull the plug, this, that, third. But we are a strong praying family. And we have a ton of pastors in the family. So folk were all moved, coming in town. Everybody was laying hands on her. They're like, if it's God's will, then she will pass on. If not, then she won't, she's going to make it. She ended up making it. She was completely different, but she made it. But that time I went into depression because we had always kind of bumped heads, even though we looked alike until she turned around. So you'd be like, oh yeah, that's Melinda, because she
Mm.
had she had the apple bottom is what they call it. She had the apple bottom. So she took her like we had the same hairstyles and everything. One day I'm gonna have to post her picture. But people would be like, oh, you're Chrissy's sister, and she's like, I'm older, and so she always had that thing with me because I was always talking to people and loving on folk, and she was very reserved. She was very artsy. So, a lot of artsy people are just a little bit different in their personality traits. And I would come in the room like, hey, da, da, and she hated that. But we were just starting to build our relationship as adults and traveling and things. And then she had that stroke. And I didn't know that she was an alcoholic. I got her a job at Highmark. So she worked with me a couple years before that happened. And I remember times of her coming in, and I could smell the alcohol. And I was like, are you drinking? She was like, well, no, I drank last night. I'm like, it's coming out your pores. Like, go home, go home. Like, you can't do that and come to work. And of course, one is my sister, but two, I got her the job. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you're a reflection of me. And I was too young to recognize that there was a problem there. And of course, the problem stemmed from I'm writing a book about her and the decisions that she made based on a relationship and how that relationship didn't go the way she thought it was supposed to go. The guy ended up marrying somebody 6 months after he met her, after being with my sister for like 12 years, all through school. And they had two kids together. And he literally named the first child with the other woman the same name as their daughter, but their daughter was retarded. And it crushed her. It broke her whole everything. And we were like, not we didn't know. And that's the sad thing. Most people go into a corner, they get quiet, and they don't want you to come in their house and things like that. Now that I'm older, I can look back and I'm like, yeah, she never would let me come in. She always be like, "You're too clean. I don't want you saying nothing about my house." But she was in depression. We found out later when I had to go to the house to see what medications and things she was on, as to what caused the stroke. She still had a Christmas tree up. And I mean, a real Christmas tree, and all the pines were on the freaking floor. That's the sign of depression. I mean, so many things. And I was just in her, I remember I was broke. And that's what caused me to go into depression. And I didn't know I was in depression, but I'm very strong minded type of individual, very self aware. And it took some time, but I noticed it was like I couldn't laugh. I was like, my spirit was like down. I was always ready to fight somebody. Some guy was walking down. I'm with my girlfriend, we're just walking at lunch downtown Pittsburgh. And this guy was just staring like he had a problem. I was like, you know him? You got a problem with him? Like thinking back to those things, I'm like, girl, was you trying to die? But I was like, I was just trying to get over this feeling of like, how is this happening to my sister? Such a beautiful soul. And so that was a transition, getting out of that depression. And I'm not one to take medication or pills or drugs or any of that. I mean, I'll drink wine, liquor. People say that's a drug, so I'll do that. But um, I one day I woke up and I was just like, okay, I didn't have the stroke. She did. I didn't drink every day and take pills. She did. So why am I basically putting myself in this box of not being able to truly live life because she can't live the life anymore? Like that wasn't my choice. So I had to break out of that and really look at like our choices, our decisions are going to create our result. Period. Period. But sometimes we can put ourselves in a box. And my one counselor said that I was survivor's remorse. Like I felt like I should have known or I should have been able to protect her or save her or whatever. And it's like I didn't, you know what I mean? But it wasn't my responsibility either. So that brought me into that was near the end of me being at Highmark when she had that stroke. And the director had told me I couldn't leave the job. And my mother had foster kids at that time. She was an emergency foster caregiver. And she had kids there, so she couldn't go to the hospital. And my other sister doesn't drive, still doesn't drive. So I was the only one that could go to the hospital to see what was going on. And I remember the director saying, if you leave, I can't guarantee you're going to have a job tomorrow. And I was like,
What year was this?
this was in where's that at? 2006, 2006,
Got
2006. I was like, I'm out of here. And I left. They didn't fire me right away. It took some time because I had just got a raise. I always received exceeded expectation, always every 6 months. I'm like, whatever, I'm out. Like this is ridiculous. So I went took care of that. And that was just a whole another horror story dealing with the hospital. But yeah, so that was right then. And when I got laid off, where most of the people there was over 200 and somewhat, you know, um, employees that got laid off at the same time. But it was mostly the older people that were like right at retirement that they laid off. And then it was like me. And they're like, that's odd. I'm like, he had already said he was going to try to get rid of me. So I knew it was coming. Nice thing is I got a severance pay. You know what I mean? But I would have stayed at that job until I retired or died. I loved my job. I loved it. And when I was laid off, that was the first time I went and got my nails done
it.
and a pedicure. I swear to God,
Mhm.
and a pedicure at the same time
Same
because I
time.
never had time to do it before. Because I was well, not always, I was married before, but I was at that time I was a single mom and I was always running to get them to daycare, running to get to the job. I was salary, so I had to be there early. I had to stay there late. So I was always rush, rush, rush. That was the first time I was able to literally sit there and relax. And I'm looking at all the people that were in there. And I was like, most people didn't look like me. And I'm like, this is the life that you're living?
I knew this was coming.
Period. I
By
was
the way,
like,
you're
well, what do you
masterfully
do?
telling your story.
It's for, listen, I'm like, well, what do you do? And so what do you do? And it's just, oh, I'm gonna marry Kay. And oh, I married Kay. I'm like, well, I need some girl time, I got into Mary Kay. And that was fun. And I learned a lot in Mary Kay. Mary Kay Ash, I learned about um speaking life into yourself. I learned about creating your own schedule. I learned about what you believe you can achieve. The bumblebee story, most people don't know about it, that like the bumblebee should not be able to fly because the way that their wings are, it's like the aerodynamic of their wing and how heavy the body is. They should not be able to lift up, but the bees fly. And they're like, well, how can they fly? It's like, nobody told them that they couldn't. So we used to always wear these bumblebees. And it's like, anytime you think that you can't do anything, look at that bumblebee. It's like, just go do it. Just go do it. So I learned a lot with them. The secret. We went deep into the secret and had a lot of girl time, a lot of like rah rah, some too much rah rah. Because again, I don't like a lot of females because I was raised to be like, masculine energy. But it was different and it was freedom. And I was able to make money when I wanted to make money. I made 50% of the product. I was never in sales and didn't like sales. So I had to go through like they would have me out walking neighborhoods with this little pink bag. I'm like, oh, this pink, pink bag. Like, oh, I want to let me let you do the satin hands and see how you like it. Okay, oh, that's $24. And I'd have it in the kit. And I was just like, oh my God, this is the most uncomfortable thing because I am not now, but I was shy. So I used to be like, I'm so shy. Like I could talk to in circles that people I know, but just random people and then trying to sell them something like that's just uncomfortable. And they're like, we'll work you through it. We'll work you through it. You have a wonderful personality. You wear, your makeup well. People would just love you, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you're gassing me up, but okay, let's go with it.
Let's go.
And, let's go.
Mhm.
They told me that they could pay my car note. Sir, I needed my car note paid. I was like,
Mhm.
how do we do that? So they're
Mhm.
like, well, you need to hire this many people. And then when you get this much sales, then you'll get, $350 a month. You can either get their car or they can pay your car note. Pay my car note. I got a Malibu.
Mhm.
I love my car. I don't want that pink car.
Mhm.
Give me the
Mhm.
car, the money. And so I ended up hiring, it was 14 people in 2 months for Mary Kay. And I got my car in month three. Well, they paid my car in
Right.
month three. And it was fun. It was absolutely fun. So that helped me. But then I had started a credit restoration company because I kind of fizzled out with the girls. I don't know. It was like after a while it was too much.
Hmm.
So I ended up starting a credit restoration company and I tied in with a mortgage company. So they were paying me a lump sum and they
Mhm.
were feeding me all of their clients that could not purchase a home because their credit wasn't good. So that was nice. I was like, God was good because I don't know how I negotiated that term. Everybody, like the other partners were like, why are you paying her and giving her names?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
how does that work? And I said, initially, they were supposed to just pay me to create the company. And so I did all the work to create the company. Now I'm going to tell my age because back then we were doing floppy disks. So I had everything saved on a floppy disk and I
Hmm.
came with the whole stack of the floppy disks.
Wow.
Like, here's your business. Database and everything. And they were like, there's no way we can run it. We'll just pay you to run the company. And that's how that happened. But I remember the wife and the sister, they were like, this doesn't sound right. I'm like, trust me, I'm not interested,
Hmm.
right? Like, I'm just interested in the business. And that was great. I did that for 7 years. Did that for 7 years until the mortgage company bellied up and ended up meeting my husband, my now husband. And our story is something different. I actually met him back in 1998 when I had a major car accident and ended up dying that day. But he's the one that got me out the car. And we didn't know it was him until years later, but that's a
Hmm.
whole nother story.
Wow.
Yeah, we just kept through years, ended up, Yeah, that's a whole nother story. So yeah, um, Mary Kay was very, very big and instrumental in the affirmations, the motivation, speaking life into yourself, believing in yourself, no matter of the fears, reading, getting into the self-help books and things of that nature.
How'd you find
And then,
insurance?
yeah, Raheem, my husband, he was not my husband at the time, but when we ended up connecting back up, he was a landscaper and I was doing the credit repair, and I got bored and I had a whole staff. So then I created a mobile hairstylist. I was always doing something else because I
Hmm.
got bored. And then I would get other people to run the businesses. And then I was like, okay, that money's coming in. I need to do something else. I always need to be doing something that's going to help others.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the one. He was doing a lot of landscaping for some very successful insurance agents. And he was asking them, well, what do you do? And this and that. And he came home one day, 2010, you need to do this insurance thing. No, I'm not.
Hmm.
No, I don't. I don't want to do anything in sales. Not realizing that my hair business, I had to go out there and solicit. I mean, everything that I've done was still sales. I just didn't look at it that way.
Hmm.
And he's like, that's all you freaking do. I'm like, no, I don't want to do insurance. I don't want to do insurance. We literally fought about this for 2 years,
Wow.
off and on, off and on. He's like, these people getting all this money and you over here. I'm like, bro, I've never asked you for a dollar for any bills. Don't come at me. Don't come at my throat about nothing, right? I'm good over here. And he's like, you could be better. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm like, why don't you do it? You know what I mean? He's like, I got a whole landscaping company. I'm like, I don't care. You do it. So we back and forth, back and forth. I was like, I don't want a job. And I looked at it as a job. I said, I don't want a job. I don't want a manager. I am a free floater. I got freedom. I can travel when I want to. I can do whatever I want when I want. I can get my nails done when I want to and my feet. I was like hooked on that. So obviously, I always go and get that done, right?
I was hooked on that.
Obviously. I was like, I do not want a job.
Yeah.
And he's like, babe, it's not a job. So he introduced me to the practice company. Um, and it wasn't until I am a dreamer. So I dream, ideas, businesses, things like that. Some I actually, help other people with. But I had a dream that I was helping this little old white lady. And she gave me the sweetest little kiss on my cheek. And she was like, honey, thank you so much for helping me. Now I can die in peace. And I was like, oh. And I woke up and I have like my little journal book. When I wake up, I write, whatever is on my spirit, I write it down. And I woke up and I looked over at him like, I can't stand him. You mean to tell me I should have been doing this? And I was like, I'm not going to tell him. So I just got online and started studying.
Hmm.
And I started studying for the test. And then one day he came home and caught me. I was like, oh, here we go. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, I was just talking to Ross. And I was like, I'm going to try her one more time. And if she don't. So he was coming home to try to get me again to get into this business. Because now his friend had made over six figures. He was only working 4 days a week at this point. And, because he'd been in there for 2 years and he really figured out the business. And now he's like on a screenshot, like, here's his checks. Look at how much he's making. But I was sitting there like, well, I'm gonna be taking a test like tomorrow. Oh man, and yeah. So he introduced me to the insurance industry. So I got in. It was not like you would think that I just took off at all. I was very quiet. I was one of three women in the organization, and of course, it's a male dominant space, and it definitely was male dominant here. And so I was sitting there like, okay, well, my husband's not even in the business, and I'm definitely not going to be meeting or hooking up with these guys to go out in the field because we were in the field. The girls aren't doing nothing. So it was just a matter of, okay, I didn't know anything about leads because the upline that I had, they didn't operate off of leads. He very much was like, you all are not going to create debt for me. So we're doing warm market, friends, family. I'm like, I'm not tapping into none of them friends because if you don't pay your bill, I'm gonna be upset because I'm gonna take it personal. So I'm like, no, not doing that. Um, and so I literally took one of my girlfriends to, we went out. We always was at the little lounge, the bar. And so we was out there talking, getting our chicken wings and eating. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like literally about to do this business. I have no idea how I'm going to get this thing started. Or, I'm not talking to random people because now there's a couple years past Mary Kay where I'm not in that mode anymore. And I was like, girl, give me your phone. She's like, what? I was like, I want every number out your phone. I was like, I'm buying all the drinks, I'm buying all the food. I need your phone. And I literally sit out there and I wrote every name and number out of her cell phone. And that's how I started the business, calling them like, hey, I'm Lisa's girlfriend. You may or may not know me, but she said you might need some life insurance. There's no, you don't have to buy anything. I have to practice with 20 people and I have a little sheet that you can just grade me on. I really would appreciate it. Morning, afternoon, or evening. And I did that for a year,
Wow.
every other weekend, because my husband was in the Rough Riders group. And so we looked at the insurance money as the play money. The insurance money was the play
It
money.
was the Rough Riders money.
It was the Rough Rider money. And little did we know at the end of that first year, because he was still fussing and fighting. When are you going to go to work? When are you going to take this serious? Da, 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 da. You got me looking bad because he referred me.
Mhm.
And I was like, I told you I don't want to do it anyway. I just had that dream. So I am helping some people. And at the end of that year, when I got the 1099, mind you, I had no chargebacks because the people that I wrote, they were just, friends of my girlfriend. So they were serious. And I was like, if you don't need it, don't get it. I was just like, look, don't buy if you're going to cancel later because I don't need that in my life. I just want people that really want the insurance. And so no chargebacks first year. And I did 40,000. And Raheem opened up the mail. He said, there's no way in heck you did $40,000. There's no way. And I'm like, no, the question is, where is it? Bro, you mean to tell me we done drank and party $40,000 away? And that was a big deal because after 14 years of me being at Highmark, I was at 53,000.
Mm.
And that was before taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And they had sent me to school every year.
Mm.
Thank God they paid for it, so I don't have any debt. But they sent me to school so I can learn the positions. I said $40,000. I said, you know what? I'm gonna stop doing hair, and I'm gonna put that little extra time into this business. Let's see what I do the second year. And he's like, why don't you just stop everything and just go full for? I'm like, no, because scared, fear, whatever.
Mm.
But then my credit business was doing good, so I'm like, mm-mm. So that second year, I just put a little bit more time in, calling the same people, setting appointments, always got referrals, and did 58.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, no chargebacks, no lead debt, 58,000. I said, okay, I'm closing my businesses. I'm gonna do full time.
Wow.
That was the hardest year of my life.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Oh my God.
That's crazy.
Mark, the hardest year of my life. The year that I decided I was going to go full time and push for my ring for the six figure. That's when they came out with the ring, six-figure ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I got to figure out like, how am I going to do this? And I'm like, I've always been a trainer. I always did policies and procedures through my corporate job, manage, train. That's what I've done for years. I said, okay, so I need to figure out how I can put that into this business, how I can keep my personality in this business and double down, double down on it. So the practice company right around that time came up with a manager in training program, and they were sending us to Florida to have training for 4 days. They were going to pay for it the whole nine. I was like, yeah, I need to do that. I need to be a manager. That's what I need to do. Then I can hire, then I can train, and then I can get overrides. And that's going to help me with my income without me having to run crazy with a high functioning autistic child, another child, and now a new marriage because now we just got married.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, that's what I need to do. Period. I'm going to be a manager. Let's go. So my husband's like, okay, that sounds great. Go ahead on the trip. I got the household, all the things. The day before I was going on that plane, my sister, who now had gotten out of the hospital from that stroke, has pretty much healed as much as possible. We had just had a doctor's appointment the month before telling us that we really need to start thinking because my mother was caring for her and my mom's older. And they're like, we got to start thinking about, are you going to take care of her after your mom passes? Because she's going to outlive both of you. That's what the doctor had just told us. So I'm like, okay, so I really need to be making more money because That's not my calling to be a nurse. So I'm gonna have to pay for somebody to be here, to do that. And the day before I was due to leave, she died in her
Mm.
sleep. The day before that, I was out in York, it's like Cumberland, York County here in Pennsylvania, and they had a little ice storm that came out of nowhere. And I called Raheem and I was like, oh my God, I'm on top of this mountain and I need to get home. And it's like the ice everywhere and I'm freaking out. And he's like, well, he's trying to calm me down, but he got that aggressive tone. I was like, you ain't helping me. I had to hang up with him. I said, I'm calling my sister
Aggressive
because she
tone.
was, look, you're not helping me. I was like, my sister's a prayer warrior. And she used to talk like they mess her voice up and everything with the trach, but she would talk real slow and real calm, and you had to listen to her because you're like, okay, you want to hear it. So that automatically had calmed me down. And she's like, you need to drive on the left side of the road. I was like, but that's where the cars come up. I'll never forget the conversation. It was the last one we had. And she said, honey, if the cars can't come up because of the ice, you can go on that side because if you start sliding and go off to the right, it gives you enough time to get out the car, to jump out the car. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Mm.
So I get down and I'm like, oh my God, I'm coming to the end. And the light is red. So the cars on the main road are going because the road was clear at the bottom of this hill. And she's like, don't worry, don't worry. So I get down there, the light turns green, and my car stops in the middle. And I'm like, Jesus. So she goes, okay, so you coming to see me tomorrow? Because she stayed with my mom. I said, absolutely, I'm coming to see you tomorrow.
Mm.
She passed away that night,
Wow.
and I didn't know. So that next day, I was on my way over, and I'm calling my mom, and I'm not busy, 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 busy. And I finally get through, and she's like, where are you? And I was like, oh, I'm on my way over. And she was like, well, pull over. And then she told me,
Mm.
and I broke, and I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean she passed? What do you mean? What are you talking about? She went home. I'm like, it just was like unbelievable. Now, this is like the second time I had to mourn her. Because the first time when she had the stroke, I went into the depression.
Mm.
Because when she came out of that, she was different. My
Mm.
first sister was no longer there. She was a different person.
Mm-hmm.
The shell was just there. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine in that having to deal with going and seeing her body, but she was like a different person. It was
Mm-hmm.
just weird. And now she really did die. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I get over there and she had the most peaceful smile on her face. And I was like, wow. And my mother told me that that night she saw this bright light because my mother slept in the dining room. My sister slept in the living room on medical beds. And my mother said, I saw this bright light. And she just thought it was a car. I'm like, Mom, how could there be a car when you're like all the way up here off the street and across the street is a park, all woods. There's no cars. There's no way to see light coming in here. And she's like, I just did. And she didn't get up. And we believe that's when she had, she transitioned. Um, and at that point, I was like, wow. And so Raheem was like, so what are you going to do? Like, you're supposed to be on a plane tomorrow. And it's like everything, you just get hit with everything. And that's when I realized truly what it all takes to prepare a body for going home.
Mm.
And it was like, because my mother was just like, she mentally checked out, right? And she's like, well, this is what you do, so you got to do it. I'm like, this isn't what I do. All I do is write policies, like this is not what I do. And I remember the manager at the other company was like, I just found out because Raheem had told him, let everybody know. He's like, I just found out that your sister passed away. I'm so sorry because they knew all the different struggles that was going on through the years, and and he was like, if we need to cancel your trip, I was like, don't do anything. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. Did everything I needed to do. Called my cousins that own funeral homes, and they were just like, I'm like, yeah, listen, here's the obituary. Here's all the things I got all done. I'm out. I'm out. I'm leaving tomorrow. I am getting on this plane. I told all of the managers in training, I told the managers, do not hug me. Do not look at me funny. Do not ask me anything. I need to get everything I can get out of this week because ish got real, real. Because when my mother was taking care of my sister, she no longer was working. And the disability checks were paying for the bills and things.
Mm.
So I'm the only one left.
Mm.
that can provide financially. And 2 months ago, I had just borrowed money from her. So I was like, I have no option. I have no option but to make this work now.
Mm.
I have no other option. So I left, and they didn't they did pretty good, probably gave me a little bit too much to drink one of them nights, but they left it. But I was like, how does that happen? The day before I'm supposed to be going on a trip to level up my business, that something so traumatic will happen.
Mm.
It's like that's the pivotal moment in our lives. And how many times has that happened
Mm.
where it's something that's like a metal sheet in front of you? It's like you can't even get through it, but you got to find a way to get through it in order to be successful.
Mm.
And I felt like that moment was like the last time this happened, I went into a shell and I was depressed and ended up being, laid off, which ended up being the blessing. But I'm like, okay, here we go again. I'm getting on that plane. I'm getting on that plane.
Mm.
And I got on the plane. We went through the training. I recorded everything, had all the packets, came back on that Sunday, had the going home. And on the plane, coming off of the plane, I almost passed out because it was like, now I got to deal with it.
Mm.
And so the one lady, Kristen, I told her I'll love her to the day we passed away. Like she caught me, like she knew everything was going on. So she caught me before I hit the floor. And I was like, okay, I emotionally now have to deal with it. So I dealt with it. I couldn't talk or anything at her home going. I was just like, I did not view her because I wanted to remember the peace on her face when
Mm-hmm.
she passed away.
Wow.
I didn't want to look at her made up or anything. I remember that's what's the last, picture in my head about her. So that was the pivotal moment for me. And I went from doing 3 to 5 thousand or 3 to 5 families in production a month to 15 or 20 every month.
Mm.
I hit my six figure in August of that year. So I went from that 58 to 142 families
Mm.
and just kept going from there. And it
Wow.
was like I was in homes crying,
it's
every home crying.
it's crazy
Yeah,
how real it gets and how it hits the front door and
yeah,
just how that those two moments,
yeah.
which were both extremely paramount in your life, shaped the next chapter, like immediately, the next chapter of your
Yes.
life, both
Yeah.
tying back to your sister.
Hmm.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, how much were your bills? How much were you getting in? I'm like, oh my God. Like, and I was not, there was no way. Like, I remember Raheem saying, well, I mean, can your mom get like a job or something? I was like,
Mhm.
she will never have to work. Like she took away her whole life and sacrificed it for my sister. She always was sacrificing to make sure that we had everything. Like she went down to a park with a gun. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
no. And he was like, I don't even know why that came out. I was like, I mean, it's the normal thing that somebody would say,
Mhm.
but I was just like, no, it's not an option. It's just not an option. Like that's not an option. And I did not think about going back to doing hair, which I know I can make money like that. I wasn't going and opening up the credit company again. I'm like, I'm going to make this work. Hardest year. Car almost got repoed when I was interviewing people, trying to get them hired. Came out from lunch and had a boot on the freaking car. I was like, that is not my car.
Mhm.
That is not my car. And I keep the orange sticker. It is down in the garage. Just as a reminder, I keep it on one. I took it off my window and put it on a folder, just as a reminder, like of those times. And I'm like, yo, it's a Friday. I don't know if anybody has ever had a boot on their car. Don't have it on a Friday because if you don't get that boot off,
It's
they're
there
gonna
all
charge
weekend.
you Saturday, Sunday, Monday, right?
Nothing's
And then
worse.
where I was at, dude, where I was at, they were like, "Oh, you're gonna get towed because you're in the strip of downtown Pittsburgh. So then you're gonna have to pay for the tow and their fees." I was like, "I can't pay for the fees of the tickets that are already on the car." Okay, so yeah, so it was just a matter of humbling. I had to ask people that I didn't even know for money. So that was another humbling to be able to get all of that done. And I was like, okay, God is stripping me from all the pride, from all of this, all of that, in order to take me to levels that I never even imagined. Never even imagined.
What a story of triumph. You know, when I think about everything you said, everything that you've been through, everything you've persevered through and become triumphant in. You know, you know what's funny? You can't get this even at a lunch. You and I could
Yeah.
do we could do dinner. You know, I could have Robin, you could bring Raheem, and we could do dinner, and I would not get this. And that's why I love this
Yeah.
podcast so much because you have to go back and it does bring this stuff full circle. Thank you for your preparation, for
Yeah.
preparing and helping us with your story. It's tremendous and it now speaks volumes about who
Yeah.
you are. And so it all makes sense, Christine. I appreciate you jumping on with us.
Thank you so much for having us. And I'll say the one last thing that I definitely wanted to mention. Out of like the practice company, and I don't talk about anything bad about any companies at all because there's successful people everywhere. But out of all that I put in, and I put a lot into the other companies, it literally took me 9 years to get up to 692 families. And in my first full year over here, I was at 855,000
Wow.
families. And that's like amazing. And I'm grateful to be over here, so it's powerful.
You're talking
So thank you for the
family
opportunity.
first life really accelerates everybody's game. So thank you for bringing your experience and skill set
Yeah.
here, and you're changing lives and making it happen. Your Story Podcast, everybody. Christine out. Thank you so much for all you do. Appreciate you. God bless.
God bless.
Thanks, Christine.